Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show. Today, bringing you another really fascinating guest who is helping to create a better tomorrow on many different fronts. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Captain Benjamin Van Buskirk, who is the director of NavalX, which is a fascinating organization that serves both the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps as an innovation and agility cell, ultimately supporting and connecting various initiatives across the Department of Defense, connecting different teams with tools, training, resources, and ultimately enabling people to think differently and deliver effective solutions to the warfighter. Captain Van Buskirk joined NavalX after helping establish the Strategic Warfighting Innovation Cell within the Navy's Warfighting Development Directorate, where as a founding member, he helped design and execute the strategic priorities and engagement plan. Captain Van Buskirk was also a former Secretary of Defense Executive Fellow at the cloud computing company VMware, where he was one of 4 Navy officers. He was selected for a fellowship and tasked with helping senior executives in areas including business strategy, technology innovation, focusing on everything from artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, mobile and cloud computing. Captain Van Buskirk also has many years of active duty experience, including but not limited to serving as both a squadron commanding and executive officer for the United States Navy, and serving, and this is a first, as a United States Joint Chief of Staff Strike Advisor, trusted to ultimately provide accurate and timely advice to the President of the United States for deployment of strategic nuclear weapons and ensuring nuclear command and control execution messages are properly sent to forces. A little more responsibility than I might want. Captain Van Buskirk has an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's in finance from the University of Arizona. Did his MBA with a focus on defense at the Naval Postgraduate School, and we're really honored to have him with us today. Captain Van Buskirk, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us, and of course, thank you for your long history of service to the United States.
It's an honor, and for the record, when I got the job on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I didn't realize all the responsibilities till after I'd gotten there, and I was like, "Wow, this is a very interesting set of orders." So, but yeah, it was very, very enlightening.
There you go. Well, it really is an honor to have you with us. I'd love to start off, though, as we typically do on the show, by handing you the floor for a few minutes, just to talk a little bit more about yourself, so we can get to know you. If you can go through everything from where you grew up, a little bit of your background going into the service, as well as sort of the development of these broad interests in business and finance, and of course, entrepreneurship. I think it'd be fun to talk a little bit about your early career journey, if we could.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm born and raised in Northern California. So born in Mountain View, grew up in Menlo Park. I'm a 3rd generation Bay Area guy. My father was an entrepreneur out there. Although he wasn't in tech, he was a restaurateur. So he had multiple restaurants and did some franchising. So I really grew up around entrepreneurship as a child. And we moved. He'd sold his franchises, and we moved to Arizona when I was a freshman in high school. And he did more of the same. As I don't know if anyone has a father who's been an entrepreneur, but it's like, what are we going to do? And it's like, oh, we'll figure it out when we get there. I'll just get into something. So as expected, he did. And I stayed there. I lived in Arizona for about 7 years. So finished high school out there, and then went on to college at the University of Arizona. And I spent 4 years there, amazingly, graduated in 4 years. And, the Navy really wasn't something that was on my radar. Initially, it was I'm going to go do business and I'm going to go follow in the family footsteps, because my grandfather also was a entrepreneur. And it was literally going to class one day, and anyone that's been a finance or accounting major will remember some really terrible 400 level international finance and tax law. It was something really, really not fun. And I was walking to class, and anyone that's been to Tucson, the University of Arizona, the final approach for Davis-Monthan kind of goes over near the school. And we had a couple of helicopters. Well, you see helicopters and 810s flying over all the time. But this particular day, I was walking to class, and two H-60 Pavehawks from Davis-Monthan combat search and rescue aircraft landed in the middle of the mall at U of A. It must have been something for ROTC. I don't remember what. And they shut down. And I walk over and I'm like, this is pretty cool. And the pilot goes, yeah, why don't you check it out? Have a seat. And I sat in the cockpit and I said, how do I do this? This is cool. This sounds pretty exciting. And the rest was history. It came down to talking to the different branches, saying I walked in as a senior in college. How do I fly helicopters? And for all the reasons a lot of people join the Navy, naval aviation's great, and wanted to see the world and live in cool places, bases near a beach, and they had some great aircrafts and great missions. So with that, really, I know this is a direction I want to go, join the Navy. And really, it's just been an adventure from there. If you look at the bio, it was really, we've lived all over I've been all over the world, and my family, we definitely made the most out of join the Navy and see the world, and we did. And it's been a heck of a ride.
Outstanding. Really outstanding. And now you get to, merge those two worlds of national security, defense, and then of course all the entrepreneurship that you're involved in now. I enjoyed reading through the NavalX materials, and this wonderful sort of tagline, connecting operational art, tactical proficiency, and commercial creativity, which I think sort of sums up everything that you're about. I was wondering if you could sort of take us on a little walk through NavalX, sort of a little bit of the history.
Yeah.
And it was founded back in 2019, and we've been honored to profile on the show what I'll sort of call the sort of the defense tech ecosystem. We've had folks on from places like Office of Naval Research, DARPA, I think places like Ensign, which are a very broad purview. On one hand, if you want to cloak an aircraft carrier, DARPA folks will do that. It'll take many years. Ensign working on sort of much more short-term stuff. Talk a little bit about what NavalX focuses on, a little bit of where it gets its directives from, and sort of what its, let's say, its entrepreneurial timeline for getting stuff, an idea to the market is.
Yeah, I'd love to. So NavalX, I'll start off with some great quotes. Steve Blank from Stanford had said that a startup is an organization in search of its purpose. And at Harvard Business School, when I did executive course in entrepreneurship and venture capital there, said entrepreneurship is creating value with no resources. So when NavalX stood up, it was very much an entrepreneurial startup, right? And so, and that was by design. When Secretary Gooch stood us up, it was the whole idea was it was the agility cell. We need to figure out how we can move faster and break down silos. And it was very much Hondo provided the seed funding, which was, here we go. I'm giving you the top cover. Take a very small team. This was, of course, before I got here, but I'm familiar with it because I'd actually met Secretary Gertz and the NavalX crew when I was a fellow, when they were still walking through trying to think through all of this. And that was the idea, is we're going to give you very, very little money, some top cover, pull a few people together and go figure it out. And so that was really, from its foundation, sort of different than you would get traditionally with starting up a Navy project or a program. All right, here's a bunch of people, here's a big budget, here's your clear authorities. It was very much go figure it out. And so that's how NavalX was started. And so that entrepreneurial spirit is fantastic. And it really does, it was great because it keeps you hungry, right? And that's something that, it's not like we have this great budget and all this top cover. It was, you need to go in and really figure it out, find your stakeholders, do that customer analysis, figure out what your value proposition is, look at where the pain points are. And that goes, really to what I learned as a fellow on solution selling. And about understanding the customer and design thinking of, all right, what do we need to be? And so that's how NavalX was stood up, and they started a handful of lines of effort. with really a bunch of founders, folks that were just go get after it types of folks. And so since then, it's really been, as NavalX has grown up, or is growing up, it's all right, how do we, just like any startup, what's working, what's not, and then continue to pivot and persevere as needed, really using the lean startup model of how we can provide value to the Navy with the problems that they have, and really what stakeholders are most important, and go from there. So that's really what the idea was stood up. But the mission really has changed a little bit, but the bottom line, it's number one, can we guide stakeholders to delivering capability to the warfighter rapidly? Number two, being a platform for connecting naval needs and challenges with solution providers across DoD, industry, and academia. And number three, drive culture change to make the Navy, and I say naval, it's Navy and Marine Corps, more agile and adaptable force. And so they really all three work together. And as NavalX started and grew, if you look at the history of it, it was very much initially, let's be a super connector and change culture. And then after a year and a half, 2 years of that, we realized, okay, if we aren't guiding towards delivering a capability, then that's the outcome, right? And that's what we added about a year ago was, okay, we've kind of figured out this foundation via our Tech Bridge network and the rest of our line of efforts. We're breaking down those silos, right? Yep. And actually creating connections that didn't exist, at least didn't exist, when I started off as a fellow in 2018, 2019, and I was going to startup accelerators around San Francisco or even around the Valley. It was like working with the DoD for a lot of folks was sort of an afterthought, right? But between what we built with the Tech Bridges and then really the other defense innovation folks, whether it's DIU out in the Bay Area, SoftWorks, yep. AFWorks, a couple of them are a little older than us, but we're all kind of driving towards the same thing of breaking down these barriers. And we started really seeing some synergy between all of our efforts. So we added guiding stakeholders, delivering capability. And why is that is one. You need to help with an outcome, right? And that word guide is specific, right? We picked that word guide because we're not going to do it, right? We have a whole Navy acquisition system to do that, which I think is really important to point out. And how is NavalX, say, different from, I think AFWorks is a great example. And for I talk to them all the time. We collaborate routinely in how we can work together, them and the rest of the DoDXs, as I call them, and Big Navy. But what's different about the Navy is we have the NRD&E, the Navy Research and Development Establishment. We have this really fantastic network of federal labs called warfare centers around the country, sponsored by our systems commands that do internal R&D. We have program offices that are there to do the program management, right, of these R&D efforts. And we have resource sponsors that come up with the requirements from the fleet. So we're not going to recreate any of that and create our own, we're going to do it all separately. The whole idea of NavalX is we have this. How do we make it work better? Yep. How can we be the grease or opinion, to help it go, or be opinion gear when lots of gears are going on? How can we really get folks working together better? And then how do we be a glue, right? Where, folks will come into us with a problem. And because our organization is so big and because the culture of the Navy is very decentralized, there's a huge value in figuring out where these connections are and helping folks work together. And that's really the foundation of what makes NavalX different, is it's about bringing folks together from the existing structures we have and how do we make it better. Now, we do, of course, when we get asked, to call from folks on the Hill or senior leaders what we think could be done better and new, of course, we share that. And we can try new initiatives as pilots, which I think is another kind of cool thing about my job, is we could pilot new initiatives if we think we've got something we can do better. But that's at its most basic foundation of what NavalX is.
Excellent. And continuing on this theme of you being, as you were saying, this super connector. I mean, a core of what goes on, as you were saying, are these this NavalX Tech Bridge model. I think I read in the recent report, I think it's something like 18 cities around the United States, Japan as well, and you're working really in once again, coming back to this sort of industry, academia, military sort of collaboration. You have off-base locations. You find that not only is this a great way to foster collaboration in a commercial business space rather than on a military base at times, but also another interesting piece of information that we spoke about, this, the concept of dual use, that, you know, there are technologies that go both ways. We want to make a more efficient warfighter, but these technologies may also be good for healthcare or whatever over here, and vice versa. Talk a little bit about how you go about organizing these, you know, very complex collaborations and creating the tech bridges, and a little bit of sort of this dual use concept, if you would.
So I'll hit both of those. The foundation of the NavalX Tech Bridge model we call the innovation pipeline. And the innovation pipeline is essentially the closest we can come to think of it as an innovation doctrine. And it's not my idea. It actually came from folks, contract support, and from folks at Stanford, particularly the thinking of guys like Steve Blank and the Hacking for Defense crews. If you haven't heard of Hacking for Defense, it's a fantastic program. Started at Stanford and scaled across multiple universities, where they break down Navy DoD problems, excuse me. But it's the idea of, you have to, just like in the military where, say, close air support, you need a foundation of terminology and a way you go about getting fires on a target, right? We want to develop some level of a baseline for how you can do innovation. What are the terminology? What are the phases? So you can be talking on the same sheet of paper, from idea sourcing to curation, to prototyping, to all the way through. It's an 8-step process, all the way to actually fielding technology and who does what and where, and actually map that out. So when I say what a tech bridge can do is, with this, not just dual use, but how you get from A to B, it's having a general rubric of the innovation pipeline that all of us are speaking the same language. So if we have somebody walks in with a problem, we can kind of map it out and at least go, okay, if we want to actually field this. Another analogy I've heard is getting to the top of Mount Everest, right? Yeah. Right. You say, you routinely get this, where I'll have a warfighter come and say, hey, this is really great tech. I really want it. And then the company says, yep, hey, they want our tech. What do we need to do? Right. Yeah. That's, somebody saying they have a solution to a Navy problem is like the ticket on the helo ride to base camp. Getting up the mountain is really complicated because of all the different folks involved, everything from laws to just different organizations, mapping that out and building up essentially a path to getting towards delivering capability. So the innovation pipeline is really the common rubric we use for mapping out from A to Z and getting something fielded. And we can help folks get from one place to the next. We've done a few soup to nuts projects where we've actually taken a problem all the way through to a solution. And we do that with our partners. Are mostly nonprofit partners, which are PIAs, which are great for that, and contract support, who can be that continuity for the NavalX team and helping move folks through there. But I'll also get a bit into dual use. And so why dual use? There are a lot of folks who will say, don't go dual use, focus on one or the other. And that's completely, and very good arguments for both. My personal opinion about dual use is that if the understanding of the venture ecosystem, it is very difficult to do a sole defense company. And by dual doing use, it's essentially just like hedging yourself, right? That way you have a commercial product, and then defense can be an additional value stream for you. And it can really work together if done right. And just some examples I've seen work. You look at folks, some companies, I won't name them on here, but they've done that where they say, gotten a SIBR, a Small Business Innovation Research, or STTR, or some level of DoD funding. They can, though, take that to venture backs and see, like, hey, look at here, I've got the DoD investing in me. This is goodness. And then they can go and get additional funding to develop that product they were working on. And so it just makes it a little bit easier, so you don't have to do 2 R&D streams. And I know sometimes, and it's a challenge, where the DoD will want something more specific, where that cost solution or that commercial use solution won't work for DoD. And I know there's a lot of reasons for that. However, from a business standpoint, if I'm doing my own startup, it's definitely less risk if you're doing dual use than doing straight defense. However, you've seen some very successful companies go straight defense and have done well, but it's just a little bit less risk if you're able to go commercial also, and that we can really go both. As far as, I think I answered your question on that. Any other follow-on on that one?
That was
Okay.
spot on. That was perfect, and it feeds nicely into sort of the next direction
Yeah.
that I wanted to go. Because once again, going back to the annual report, you've generated I think the number is something like $50 million or so of different tech bridge projects so far.
Yeah.
The research area is quite diverse, everything from artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, advanced manufacturing. And I thought it'd be fun just to touch on a couple of these. We've done some of these themes before, but really to look at it from a NavalX sort of strategic perspective. We about a year ago we hosted Brett Vaughn from ONR's artificial intelligence, chief of artificial intelligence ONR at the time, and he was introducing us to themes like using artificial intelligence to switch power loads on carriers and directed energy and all sorts of cool stuff like that. You're involved in artificial intelligence grand challenges, looking for solutions that may take somewhere in the range of 18 months to get to the fleet to solve problems. Talk a little bit about, because I know you've also been in the private sector involved in artificial intelligence, which is a hot topic everywhere now. Talk a little bit about some of what the challenges are all about and some of the things you're interested in with regard to artificial intelligence.
Sure. And so I'll hit on like why we pick certain topics. And so
Please.
It goes back to what interests the boss fascinates me. Yeah. And so it's NavalX is sort of in a unique position in that we have these tech bridges that are locally owned and operated. My father was the franchisor, right? Yeah. So think of them as NavalX franchises. And that was the idea when Secretary Gertz started it. He built SoftWorks up from the ground up. And when he came to the Navy, he said the challenge with that is just one. What if we could have multiple around? And so essentially, all right, how do we create for lack of a better term, a franchise model? So what's great about it is they're locally owned and operated, but yet have that connection to headquarters, right? With a common way of thinking. And so what do they do? So each of our tech bridges are actually co-located with a warfare center. And each of those warfare centers or labs have things that they focus on. So one, they do things that are important to their local ecosystem, but at the same time, we take in high-level problems. And so that answers your question with that is at the highest level, I'm looking at things that are important to the CNO and my boss, ASNR DNA, the acquisition executive, on what are the big problems you see and you want us to get after and help you solve. And of course, AI is one of those. It's in the CNO's NAV plan. He talks about these are our priorities. You hear things like AI, contested logistics, unmanned systems, live virtual constructive. And so we go into how we work with those stakeholders at the senior level. What things can we do to help you move this along in a support way? And so you've heard, I'm sure, about the unmanned task force that the CNO has stood up, right? We are in a supporting role of that, right? As soon as that came up, all right, what can we do to help you guys? And so I have NavalXers on that staff full time. We help with the design, with the facilitation, and if they want to do an industry day, okay, let's work together. How do we help you? Be that grease, be that pinion gear, help you move what you need to work along. We have multiple other projects with either program offices or warfare centers or some research sponsors trying to figure out with a problem, how do I get my job done and how can we help you do that? So we kind of hit it both. It's almost like a states versus federal, as I've been explaining that analogy too, is to think of as our tech bridge network, we're sort of like states, and we also have sort of the federal level when we work together to solve those problems. But I'll also add in, and I think this is important for everyone to hear, is just last month, the DAWN SBIR program, the Tech Transfer, Rapid Innovation Fund, and a handful of others were moved under the NavalX umbrella, right? And so if people aren't familiar with those programs, we're building out our websites and our branding, but they're fantastic programs. And you look at something like DAWN Cyber and how we've been able to, look at the model for that, which is very different from how the Air Force does it, and that every one of these small business innovation research topics are actually come from program offices, right? They're vetted with somebody on the back end who says, I want to transition this in the future. And so kind of another decentralized approach where if you look at our Tibber topics as we put them out, they all have backing from somewhere, right? From a problem that has a requirement, that has a program office that says they want it. And so that program has been really successful. And so I'm going to do a shout out for them because they're now new under the NavalX umbrella, right? And so we have, as I'm learning, they're really doing great stuff. And so one of the exciting things looking at the future of where we want to kind of get after is now that we have really, we merged with the ONR's Naval Accelerators, what was founded a few years ago, and we brought NavalX and the Naval Accelerator together under one organization, which is pretty exciting. It's now, how do we all work together now under one common organizational structure of things like DonCIBR, the tech bridges, and our other lines of efforts with like tech transfer, rapid innovation fund, and so forth. It's pretty exciting. So right now we're working through that, how we can strategically align all these lines of efforts together to really deliver value.
Awesome. Another one that I found completely fascinating, and once again, speaking to sort of the super connective model, is specifically at the Northwest Tech Bridge, which I guess located at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. You know, here you're bringing together Army Medical Command, and we just had Vic Suarez on from Operation Warp Speed, the VA, Rachel Romani over there. We did a show with ONR people, and here once again you're coming back to finding these capabilities that are sort of dormant in terms of production of face shields and air hoods and all sorts of other interesting sort of biomedical opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about how the Naval Undersea Warfare Center sort of became a very interesting hub for these healthcare opportunities through NavalX?
Yeah, that is awesome. And so that's like the next level, right? So we have like multiple levels here. With my phone back, you have like the basic Navy labs connecting with Navy labs, and then connecting industry with Navy. And then it's like, okay, how are we connecting across DoD? And then how are we connecting with other partners? And really what makes it happen is, you know, the MIT, and I'm losing her name, fantastic professor there, studies innovation ecosystems, right? And there are certain places like your Silicon Valleys, your Bostons, your Seattles that just have the right mix of folks to just make magic happen, right? And so you look at a place like Seattle, they really brought it all together with the MAC, right? The Military Acceleration Center, between congressional support. You have startups, you have big businesses there, you have government support, you have universities, you have venture capital. You gotta have everything together that makes sense. And there's no substitute for physical proximity. And we're trying to break those down, right? Like we are, like this podcast. But what happened with those undersea warfare centers, I'd say both of them, both Newport and Keyport, Washington, is geographically you have them all together. Right, and there's just no substitute for those accidental, or you can call them focused collisions of diverse ideas, which is at its foundation, in my opinion, another wonderful lesson from my time as a fellow and wandering around the innovation ecosystem in the Bay Area. One of the smartest folks I met had said, you know, all the key to innovation is just the accidental collision, the collision of diverse ideas, right? Not accidental, getting those folks working together. And so there's something about the physical proximity there that now you can bring them together, and we're working on that here in DC. But I'll also throw out that what another win was with during COVID, we needed PPE, protective equipment for doctors, and so it was really just by the willpower and initiative of the folks, both in the Navy and the other defense folks, and industry and academia, that all just got together and said, "What can we do to solve this problem?" And that was, I think, a huge one, because they just worked together to get it done because it had to get done. And so I don't know if that was a catalyst for it, but what I've just seen up there is it's a matter of desire and drive by the people that are there, along with having that physical proximity of everyone there, and a greater foundation of an innovation ecosystem, right? Because we've noticed that, you know, a place like Seattle, you kind of have already a lot of the gears there, and it's just easier to put that pinion in and deliver, right? And other places it's harder, where you're building this innovation ecosystem from the ground up. But you know, that's just some of my thoughts on how that worked, and it continues to work. And I will say the cross-departmental collaboration is really exciting to me, especially as we go look at things like how can we work together with defense innovation units, say, where they've got a customer and a solution, but they're missing some of the coordination on the back end. There's just maybe not fully baked yet. What can we do to sort of fill in the gaps to work together with those other DoD Xers? And the same thing with AFWERX. We see all the time looking at like their SWIC program and ours, and see they have a very large funnel at the front end with their open topics. What can we do to say, take this funnel that they brought in and leverage that and and get those companies that maybe got an AFWERX SIVR and find a nice landing spot for them in the Navy somewhere, or even if not a SIVR, another program where there could be a demand for something that maybe the Air Force did an initial investment on. So that's all in work.
What goes on at the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting? Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, I know that has a lot to do with workforce agility. There's a component of digital agility. Take us a little through what sort of the best practices and some of the problem solving and ideation that you're involved in there at CAW.
Yeah, the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting, the cause, we call it. The history is actually kind of awesome. It was founded by a handful of Marines who had learned Scrum and design thinking and human-centered design. And this is really cool. What if we abstracted the main ideas of this and then applied it to a military context, like what we as Marines do on a day-to-day basis? And then it just went from there. And so at its foundation is teaching these courses, by us as DoD folks to other DoD folks, so they can learn how to attack and solve problems at their own level in different ways. And so we have curriculums for a handful of courses that we go out and we teach both virtually, and we will go offsite and teach. And we have volunteers around the country who are CAW enthusiasts, a lot of them very motivated Marines who go out on their own time and will go teach these courses to other Marines so they can solve their problems at their level. At the same time, we do problem workshops with the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting, which is similar to our workforce agility line of effort. Very, very similar. A lot of the staff work together on various projects, but they do problem solving sessions with them using the type of tools that they teach at the CAW. And then, they have the standard tools that we'll teach. And then we also have some other tools in the toolbox, which is, comes in very useful, especially now if the CNO, if those are watching the podcast, if you Google Get Real, Get Better, it's a CNO-led initiative on how can we as a force identify and solve problems at the lowest level, and then fix or escalate moving up. But if you Google it, he's got some great work and some ideas he put online. But I think what I love about that is it's really the senior leadership going, there are different ways we can approach problem solving. Let's try them and do them. And so we're working with the staff on these ideas that we're teaching with the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting. Something as simple as what Scrum is, or the design thinking process, which to me, as a military guy, was quite transformational. Because I was taught from the beginning, I'm a naval aviator, right? Our procedures are written in blood. You don't want to be going and doing design thinking on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, right? How could I do this differently? It's you generally, because of the nature of what we do, it's sustainable, repeatable processes, generally speaking. There's times when you're doing tactical development, creative thinking, but most of the time, it's you got folks coming in, folks coming out. You need to learn how to operate and do it, once you do it successfully without breaking your gear, and two, so you can win wars. But I think it's pretty exciting that we're seeing Navy leadership go, well, let's look at it from the most fundamental aspect. What is the problem we're trying to solve? And then start defining that problem, look at different ways we could attack this, and then bring it up to the chain of command and go, hey, I think we might have a really interesting thing that we hadn't thought about before. And that's just not something we normally do. We do it in certain pockets in the development center, warfare development centers, or so forth. But I think it's pretty cool that he's doing that. But going into the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting, that's the type of stuff that they're doing. We go teach those courses so that folks at their echelon can solve their problems in a different way. And it's been awesome. And I love the program.
Yeah, I just love the once again the way you're weaving innovation into the entire system, this innovation thinking, and I just think it's such a refreshing concept in a very elegant way in all these examples that NavalX is providing this to make, as we say.
Well, young folks want it. They want it. It's different. This generation is different, right? Yeah. With me, I was fine, just like wrong way, right way, Navy way. Like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Sure, like, got it. And one of my mentors had said, the young folks don't want to wait 30 years to be a partner, right? Yeah. It's like they want to be able to be. I was blown away with my junior officers when I was a CO, that they were asking these type of questions and interested in and really getting after and solving these big problems that for me, it was like, whatever, I'm just go fly and do my thing. And so the young folks are hungry. And so I think it's just really exciting to see how much they just have eaten all this up, and that we have senior leadership that also is saying we want to encourage that type of thinking, because those are the kind of folks we want to stay in, right?
Yep, absolutely. Captain, if I may once again just read, as I said at the beginning, about your role as the United States Joint Chief of Staff Strike Advisor, where in your job description, you were trusted to provide accurate and timely advice to the President of the United States for employment of strategic nuclear weapons, ensuring nuclear command and control execution methods properly sent to the forces. Now, I'm going to weave it a separate question here. One, I would love to hear a couple of minutes about this, because it's just a fascinating role. But I'm a child. I was born in the late 60s. I'm a child of, the 70s and 80s, and I remember war games and sort of the second stage of the Cold War, and a lot of the themes of the movies then were, we got to make sure that the right codes are sent to the right places and things don't go wrong and whatnot. The second question, or the question I had on the list here, is obviously future innovation themes that you, Captain Van Buskirk, are particularly most interested in. Now, I was assuming, just thinking about it, well, most likely this gentleman is interested in things like cyber and artificial intelligence and machine learning that make sure that those, I hope, as sort of a layman, these missiles stay in their silos and so forth. But talk a little bit about sort of what gets you excited, what technologies scare you, and maybe excite you and scare you at the same time, as it all pertains to this theme, if you would.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit about, so my background in AI was really because I was at VMware, the software company, that they don't focus on, like, I got to go meet the folks from Google and Waymo and was it even YouTube, right, that came in and talked about their algorithms and how they did it. VMware, my basic understanding was mostly in the cloud aspect of AI, and how do you manage data to go from where, a source to the right person to make a decision, right? And that AI at the edge, I think, is really, really fascinating, and it's really hard. And if you look at the type of warfare of the future, with that's where, in my opinion, it's really, really powerful. Of course, as an aviator, OODA loops are everything. Observe, orient, decide, and act, right? And whoever gets that loop fastest wins. I think we all can agree from, the stance that our country's taken, fully autonomous systems without, somebody there to make a decision is probably a ways away, if anything, for ethical reasons. And, I'd always ask, how come you have a pilot, an officer in the aircraft and not a warrant officer? And it's like, I think it might just be, it's in the end, somebody's going to pull that trigger, and you want to have that accountability. And so in the end, I think what's really exciting is how we can use AI to decrease that OODA loop, especially in the orienting portion, observe and orient. I still think, in my personal opinion, that we're going to have a human in the loop to make a decision and act. But there's a huge opportunity as far as any warfighter that is taking in information. You have to orient yourself and then make a smart decision based on what you're seeing. I think AI can help a ton with that, in getting the right accurate, right information and the right kind of information to that warfighter quickly, and using autonomous systems to help filter and move that information around that you're getting. Because there is so much information out there. A lot of times it's overload, and as an operator, you're having to decide what to listen. Where's the needle in the haystack? What's the important piece of information I need? I think that's just a huge opportunity, and there's just so much work to be done when you look at getting AI or getting the data from different platforms, and those platforms collecting data and getting that to the decision maker faster than the enemy does. And my opinion is I think that decisions by automation on employment of weapons are probably a ways away, if ever, from based on once again what the American people deem appropriate from an ethical standpoint.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, well, it's one more thing I'll share. So my first AI course I took, it was a meeting, it was a great presentation at Park over at Stanford Research Center about, AI isn't the end all be all, and that you can trick AI. It was on adversarial perturbations on how to confuse AI. And so you think about it that way, it's a game of, you can use countermeasures to trick your AI systems. And so those are just things we need to take under consideration. I think that whole realm, or that right word, is a great great place to do research on how to trick AI.
Mm. Hopefully the AI can be tricked that easily, but well, I'll not being an AI expert, I'll rely on the experts like yourselves to make sure everything.
I wouldn't consider my expert, but I was able to do. There's some folks that were giving us a briefing on their cool facial recognition AI. So I went like this, and then it disappeared. Okay, now I'm reappeared.
Awesome. What's coming up for the rest of 2022, maybe early 23? Any new tech bridge initiatives, conferences that we can watch people can meet you at? Anything else hot on the NavalX radar that you want to talk about? That I know I will put a link to the annual report that you have, because you have so much going on. But any other innovation initiatives that you want to mention, please take the floor on anything that I missed.
Well, what I would say is definitely follow us on LinkedIn, NavalX, because right now we're still building out what the next year looks like as far as the different places we'll be presenting. We'll be at Sierra Space, right? We're always there for that. ITSIC has also in Orlando has also been a great conference where we've spoken and presented there before. I'm speaking this Friday at JP Morgan's Vet VC Summit, which will be a great forum to talk about these type of things. Dual use is going to come up, right? The environment is different now than it was a few months ago, right? And how do we need to keep the U.S. industrial base moving and building for defense, and it is a challenging environment to do it. And so I'm really looking forward to meeting with those folks and working together on a way ahead. And I will just hit that real hard here. Another one that's great about NavalX, and CNO said it at ITSIC last year, was we do this and we figure this out in collaboration with industry and academia and other DoD. This isn't a bunch of Navy folks sitting in a room saying we're going to figure out the answer. And so when we go and engage and speak at these places, I said we have multiple coming up. I said it's literally between me and our team here at NavalX. We try to, one, get the word out, but two, we show up at these things with questions. Like we are forming our strategic. We have this Office of Private Capital at NavalX, and we're working with Big Navy on a strategy for private capital. And so I'm going there with questions like, what do you think, guys? You're out there in the trenches, right? You're out there trying to raise money. What can we do as a Navy to be a better partner for you as both VCs and venture-backed companies? So you'll want to send your companies our way. BICIT being sort of a niche, maybe high risk, and who do we need to talk to get better? And I will say that I love that aspect of what we do, that I want your inputs. And so when we do these speaking, it's a two-way conversation. But the best answer I'd say for that is follow our LinkedIn, and we will post when one of us, me or our other executive team, I have 2 deputy directors, both with PhDs who are really, really smart in engineering. And we will go out and we speak. And so I'd say follow us on that. As far as our strategic objectives for the next year, we're actually building that out right now, because we just had this merger with ONR's Naval Office of Navy Research, Naval Accelerator, with things like I mentioned, those other Navy programs that are now part of NavalX. And so we're figuring that out right now. What does right look like? And what should our objectives be for this next year to really drive change now that we've really gotten, as I call it, Series A, right? And that when the Navy did this merger, not only did they give us, say that we want these programs to be in the NavalX umbrella, right? We also established NavalX formally we had been a startup, all right, and we are now a permanent unit. We are attached both to ONR and Office of Navy Research and ASN RDNA. Think of it as ADCON and OPCON for the joint people going to nuclear strike advisor stuff, right? It's you have your operational chain of command, which provides you the direction and orders, which is ASN RDNA, the acquisition executive. But we're also attached to Office of Navy Research. They're like our ADCON, man, train, support, guidance, right? So how do we work together with our 2 bosses, and of course the CNO and our other senior stakeholders, to deliver that capability? And so we're putting that together right now. We're putting our team together and figuring out what the strategy for the next year looks like where do we want to focus our efforts? So the answer is stay tuned.
No, I definitely am staying tuned. Going to be encouraging everybody that watches the episode to do so. And it's going to be fascinating to to continue to watch the evolution of your group, and just going to be rooting you on, because it's just a completely fascinating organization that you're running there, and making things happen. For everybody that is going to be listening to this episode across the various podcast networks or watching on our YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Captain Benjamin Van Buskirk, Director of NavalX, connecting operational art, tactical proficiency, commercial creativity to support and spur on these fascinating innovation initiatives across the Department of Defense, connecting to academia, connecting to industry. Captain Van Buskirk, it was really an honor listening to you. I want to thank you for, again, taking the time out of your schedule for doing this. Obviously, thank you for everything you're doing there and your long history of defending the United States. And as we say on this show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through everything you're doing. It's really a very fascinating story. I'm rooting you on, and will encourage everybody listening and watching the show to continue to do so.
Well, thank you, Ira. And I would like to thank everyone who's listening too, because, this is an American problem, not just a Navy problem. And it's the folks out there in industry and academia that are part of this. And I can't thank you enough. It's just always so awesome to see folks that made that choice to work in defense and to be in the defense industry and academia, or like you in podcasting, to support the cause, because we're in it together. So thank you for making the choice to do this and spend this time with your life and in your careers to help out the defense of our country.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Be well.